All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. You'll be hearing about a great new release that we have, a push-button failover solution for every business. We have two quick housekeeping items. First is that you're going to receive a copy of this presentation this afternoon after the webinar. Second is that we have a questions tool. Please use that tool throughout the webinar. You can ask questions during the entire presentation, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. One lucky participant is going to be winning a free Kindle. So definitely stick around for that, ask lots of questions, and hopefully you'll be the winner. Now, I see a lot of notes that the pizza hasn't arrived yet, so I am going to look into that for those of you who haven't received your deliveries. So I'll keep in touch over the question tool to let you know if that was just a late delivery. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to today's presenter then. We have the CEO and founder of Infrascale. His contact information is also here on the screen. His email is ken@infrascale.com. So let me pass it over to Ken.
Terrific. Thanks, Carla. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are. Today we're talking about disaster recovery. Here's the agenda on screen, folks. First thing I want to say is we try and make these webinars interactive. I can see a lot of you on the questions tool already, which is fantastic. For those of you having pizza glitches, do follow up. We will get you that pizza. The agenda today looks like this. We're going to talk about trends in data protection, 5 reasons you need to rethink your current DR solution, a bit about Infrascale, and then Q&A and a prize giveaway. The very first interactive question I'm going to ask the audience is this. We normally give away a Kindle at these events, folks, but you know, I'm looking at the audience. I'm seeing that it's predominantly a male audience. Would you be more interested in an Xbox One or a 3D printer? Feel free to use the questions tool to vote on that. Just sort of say Kindle, 3D printer, or Xbox One. And remember, that prize goes to the person who asked the most questions on topic. All right, we've got the votes coming in. Cool, so keep firing those in, boys and girls. This is terrific. Everybody's finding the questions tool and you're all interacting. This is what we want, okay? We want to make this thing interactive. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the presentation. You're going to listen to me for 20 minutes, then a demo, then an Ask Me Anything. And in that Ask Me Anything, we will announce the winner of that prize, which Carla's going to tally the votes. So you guys remember, you can vote throughout Xbox One, 3D printer, or Kindle. Let's dive in. Folks, if you can just answer this first poll for us. It's an interactive poll. You can click on screen. Tell us about the size of your business. Why is this important? 3 things. Firstly, it helps us tailor the content of these webinars to the audience that we're actually talking to. Secondly, throughout the webinar today, I'm going to use a variety of examples. And if I sort of have a better understanding of who y'all are, then I'm going to be able to tailor those examples to you. And then thirdly, as we're doing market research, this data is really, really invaluable for us. Actually, it's a very quick way for us to answer a bunch of internal questions that we have. Terrific. I'm going to leave that here on screen here for another 10 or 15 seconds. We've got about 69% of you have voted. So we get a few more votes, and then we'll wrap this one up. All right, terrific. So we've got a big U curve in the data today. 26% of you are between 0 and 100%, 100 employees. 28% of you are between 100 and 500 employees. At the other end of the scale, 23% of you are over 1,500 employees. So it's quite a distributed audience, which is interesting. That, friends, is going to make my example dilemma difficult, but I'll do my best. So let's dive in and talk about some trends in data protection in 2015. This slide is a bit of an eye chart, right? A lot of statistics, but the bottom line is that we are all living with a false sense of security. Data's never been more important, but our preparedness has never been lower. 70% of businesses aren't confident with the statement, our backup and disaster recovery operations are well managed and planned. That's from Gartner. 50% of SMBs back up less than 60% of their data, leaving the rest vulnerable to data loss. That's from Semantic. IDC's got that the average cost of downtime for the top 80% of the companies they serve is $20,000 per hour. And this last statistic from the Institute of Business and Home Safety, that an estimated 25% of businesses never reopen following a major disaster, is absolutely scary. So uptime's never been more important, data's never been more important, we've never been worse prepared. What's going on? Well, one of the leading causes of this is what I call data fragmentation. So if I can take you back 20 years, right? So sort of jump in your DeLorean with me, go back to 1995 and think about data protection. On the left is how it used to look. We had this data castle, the data center, and we could build big walls around it. And that's where our CRM and our ERP and our other apps ran. Compute was our key resource. If we were worried about endpoints, they were Windows laptops owned by the company coming in over a VPN. Fast forward to today on the right-hand side of this screen, and it's an absolute mess. You've got virtualization has meant that you've got fragmentation of the data center, multiple apps running on multiple hypervisors. You've now got data sitting out in public clouds as well as private clouds. The file server is dying a long, slow, painful death. Bring your own cloud. Out in endpoint land, it's even more complex with so many different devices. They could be bring your own BYOD devices that users own. They could be running Mac OS X. They could be running Windows. They could be running Android or iOS. And all of this complexity creates coverage gaps. And those coverage gaps correlate to risk. Risk not just for the business that you work for, but for you, your job. Your neck is the one that's on the line, that when data is lost, you're the one who's in trouble, right? And so as an industry, we've got a big problem on our hands, and a big part of that is vendors. Guys like me are actually making your life more difficult. We, the CEOs of data protection companies, continually present you with a sucker's choice. And when I first pitched my marketing team on this idea, they sort of didn't know what I was talking about. So maybe it's an Aussie thing or a British thing, but a sucker's choice is a choice between two alternatives with the false premise that those are the only two options available. So imagine you walk into a restaurant and you order the steak and fries, and the waitress says to you, "Very good, sir, would you like your steak to be cold or your fries to be cold?" Well, of course, that's idiotic. I want my steak to be hot and my fries to be hot. But this is sort of an apocryphal story, and it represents the type of choice that data protection vendors ask you, the data protection users, to make. For example, a classic choice that you're presented with today is, do I go with cloud-based backup on the one hand, or do I go with appliance-based backup? Now, both of these architectures have pros and cons. For example, cloud-based backup is immediately up and running. It's got unlimited capacity. The cloud is redundant and resilient and omnipresent so that every device can connect to it. But man, does it have some problems. Data upload time is slow, so is recovery. Data leaves your network, so you've got to depend upon the vendor's security. And so you look at appliance-based backup, which supports large data sets and data sovereignty, quick recovery over the LAN, backup to many locations, but it's got some drawbacks as well. Capacity planning is something that you never ever get right. It's expensive. Hardware is inherently fragile and bad things happen on site. The management of many appliances is a nightmare. Updating all those systems is a problem. So neither of these paradigms are perfect. And yet you're presented with sort of this Sophie's choice of having to choose between a cloud backup architecture and appliance-based backup architecture. What if there was a third way? What if there was a solution that combined the best of both of these worlds? Well, there is. And so if we look at the evolution of data protection over the last 40 years, it's been very slow on innovation. In the 70s, tape backup arose as the predominant metaphor. Then in the 90s it was disk-based backup, which was a lot faster but is expensive, and still today is still one of the predominant patterns. Then cloud backup arose in sort of the noughties, but it was a bit of a false start. You know, we thought it had terrific promise for enterprise data protection, but it turned out that it had a lot of limitations. So In 2014, if you asked any analyst what was the best pattern for enterprise data protection, they would have told you disk-to-disk to cloud or hybrid cloud backup. But now in technology that you should be looking at, it's DRaaS or DRaaS. This is the ultimate sort of combination of disk-based backup, cloud-based backup, right? So it's a hybrid cloud backup architecture that then promises push-button failover to virtualize and boot and run your infrastructure wherever you need it within minutes. Now, we recently commissioned a study to look into adoption trends around DRaaS and what the market thought about DRaaS. And a couple of key things jumped out. The first one is that most people are using backup as a poor man's DR solution, right? So most people surveyed actually want DR, they just can't afford it, right? So on the left-hand side, you've got what percentage of the people surveyed could actually fail over their infrastructure to a second location within 15 minutes, and it was only 10%. And what's interesting is that this number was the same no matter how much you scaled the business. Among 300 employee businesses, it was 10%. Among 5,000 employee businesses, it was 10%. So when we dug into then why people weren't using DRaaS or DRaaS, the number one reason was cost. 60% of people cited cost. And then right on its heels was reliability, compatibility, security, and complexity. The end result is that people simply don't have good failover solutions in place. Right, broad generalization, but I'll make it. And people are often using backup as poor man's disaster recovery or poor man's failover. And so that then is the setup for the topic of today's webinar, 5 reasons you need to rethink your current DR solution. Reason number 1, DR today is confusing. When I studied information systems, this is how I was taught to think about secondary storage. I had archive, backup, DR, and failover, and I analyzed those through the lens of 3 vectors, RTO, RPO, and TCO, or, put a different way, time to recover, point at which I recover, and total cost. Well, we at InfraScale think that now in 2015, in the gory aftermath of all of these high-profile intrusions and security breaches, that security should also be considered as one of those key vectors. But if you look at the slide, you'll see a trend. On the left-hand side, you've got archive with a lousy RTO and a lousy RPO, but it's also got a low cost. If we go all the way across to the right to failover, then you've got a fantastic RTO and a fantastic RPO, but a really high cost. What we want is in the bottom left-hand corner in red. We want an awesome RTO, an awesome RPO. We want security built in, and we want a low price point. And because we're greedy, you know, we want to be able to fail over in minutes, right? We want to use the cloud. We want it from a single vendor. We want terrific support. We want a partner network. So the pattern that we've been looking for, terrific RTO, terrific RPO, low cost, has generally eluded us. And here on this slide, I've laid out 6 different methods that are all academically described as disaster recovery. Everything from backing up to tape and storing off-site, through SAN level snapshots replicated, all the way down to having a full-on DR warm site. And I've listed a bunch of vendors here. And this slide is admittedly an eye chart, right? The idea of this slide is not for you to read everything, but I want to take your eye over to the right-hand column where we have the RTO, the RPO, and the price. And let's do some pattern matching. You remember what we were looking for. We're looking for 5 bubbles of awesome for RTO, 5 bubbles of awesome for RPO, 5 bubbles of awesome for price, and $1 sign on cost. And you just don't see that combination anywhere. Put a different way, none of the current methods of disaster recovery actually match what it is that we're looking for. And that brings us to the second topic in today's webinar, that DR today is expensive. So whilst some solutions can achieve the RTO and RPO we want, none of them can achieve the cost profile. And why is that? Well, on the left-hand side, we've got a diagram that shows you how most DR solutions are architected. You've got a production site, like a database or an email server, and that replicates to a failover site. And to make those 2 things work, you've got bandwidth, people, and software in between. And some people think, well, I'm just going to double my costs to go to that sort of DR scenario. But actually, you can go up to 3 times the cost of your production infrastructure to do this, right? Because this sort of hardware-intensive DR regime is expensive to implement. It's complex to test and use. It's vulnerable to hackers. Security isn't built in. And so before I move on and sort of tell you guys about a better way, I want to gather a bit more data from the audience. This time, the audience poll is about failover DR. Which of the following describes you and your business, right? So we've got 3 choices here, and I'm going to pop this interactive poll, so I'll put the pizza down and reach forward and actually click one of the options. So when it, oh, good, sorry about that, folks. When it comes to failover DR, which one is you? A, I can fail over to a second site in under 60 minutes already. B, I wish that I had failover DR, but I simply can't afford it. C, I don't think I need failover DR. At 63% of you have voted. Let's get a few more folks. We'd like to get more than 70%. All right, well, we'll call it there. We had 65% of you vote, and the results were this. 37% of you said that you could fail over to a second site in under 60 minutes. 60% of you said that you wish you had failover DR, but you can't afford it. 3% of you said you don't think you need failover DR. And that, folks, is pretty consistent with the research that we just did in that study, that most people simply can't do failover DR, and the leading reason is price. And that's because the way the DR solutions have been architected historically is really silly. So let me tell you about a better way to do it. Here on screen, we've got some end users, and they're connecting to some apps and some data, right? Let's call it an Exchange server. And they are doing their work, but all of a sudden, boom, power surge, servers go down, right? So what do you do in this scenario? Let's say, by the way, that this is in a different time zone to you. So let's assume that this happens at 2 a.m. your time, but you're the guy that's got to deal with this. Well, here's what you do. You log in on your iPad or your laptop, any browser. And you can do this from your bed because it is 2 a.m. You tell Infoscale to recover the environment in question. It then recovers and virtualizes all of the servers that are down. You tell it where you want to boot and run these machines, on the appliance itself or in the cloud. Let's say that the power surge that happened took out the appliance too. Fine, you do it in the cloud. You can run up to 200 VMs, connect, and they keep working, right? And that entire process can happen in under a minute. And if you guys are all interested, later in this presentation, I'll do a demo. And so it's easy enough for a 4th grader to bring back a business, right? This is Infoscale's core promise. Push button failover from anywhere, right? Boot on the appliance or in the cloud. And we don't just do this for some infrastructure. We do it for all the major platforms, right? So first principal support for VMware and Hyper-V and Windows running on Metal. So we're solving these complex recovery scenarios for you with the push of a button. And by the way, we guarantee this. So you can recover your servers and applications and data in 15 minutes or less, guaranteed. And there's an economic, we are standing behind that promise economically, because there's a lot of obfuscation in this industry, and we just want to make it really clear that we are time boxing the downside scenario for you. So the worst case scenario in a disaster is not knowing when things are going to come back up. With Infoscale, you know that your worst case is 15 minutes. In most cases, it happens faster than that. In most cases, the booting is almost instantaneous. So that brings us to the 3rd major reason that DR kind of is crummy today, and that's that it ignores lots of data. So here is a headquarters location, and at the bottom I have an AD server, a database server, and some app servers. And I'm going to back those up to a backup server, which will then pump data to a media server. And this is your traditional, let's say this is backup exec. We'll presume this is backup exec. And should point out, this setup is really lousy for road warriors, home users, branch offices, and smartphones, because it's behind the firewall and doesn't really support that distributed data. I would get rid of those 2 additional sites and only have to worry about the actual location that I'm trying to protect. And then on top of that, I'd have some sort of magic cloud that gave me DR services and backup services and archive services. Well, lo and behold, that's actually what you can do. And so with Infoscale, you can have one single solution that's good for all of your production infrastructure that works for branch officer, road warriors, tablets, and smartphones that combines DR, backup, and archive in a single cloud solution. And so the problem with traditional DR and backup solutions is they really make you pick which one of your children do you want to save. You're going to protect physical servers, virtual servers and desktops on the one hand, or you're going to have a solution for laptops, mobiles, and branch offices on the other. In a hybrid cloud world, it doesn't make sense to only protect one pool of data. You should have a solution that can protect all of your data. And so what do I mean by all of your data? Here on screen, we've got what I call the InfraScale dartboard, where we sort of show the key use cases down the left-hand side that we support: backup, DR, archive, and file sharing. And across the top, all of the form factors that we support: mobile devices, desktops and laptops, and then physical and virtual servers. And note that we support over 100 versions of major operating systems, from big ones like Windows Server and all the major Linux distros, through to more esoteric ones like Novel NetWare or IBM AIX. I like to say that InfraScale can help you protect everything from mobiles to mainframes. And so that then takes us to the fourth reason to break up with your current DR solution, which is that DR today requires you to be MacGyver. And MacGyver was an awesome TV show, but it's not what you should have to do to set up a proper DR solution. If you think about the traditional way of deploying this technology, you need to think about deploying integrated backup software, disaster recovery software, maybe WAN acceleration if you're dealing with a lot of data, high-speed storage for DR, replication. And wouldn't it just be better if all of that came to you in one integrated solution so that you weren't trying to cobble it all together yourself? And we were at a conference a few years ago, and a partner said to me, "Ken, I don't want to worry about all this stuff. Why can't somebody just give me a magic backup box that solves all of this for me?" And I laughed because we're having beers and it was fun. But that phrase, the magic backup box, became somewhat of a catch cry at InfraScale. Now you can find engineers and product managers and designers literally gathered around whiteboards discussing this. And here's what we think a magic backup box looks like. It has WAN acceleration technology built in. Dedupe over the network, right? Dedupe done at the block level on ingest and over the wire. Adds in the functionality, the cloud spillover functionality that cloud storage gateways have, right? So you don't need to worry about putting a Cterra or Steel store in your network because that same spillover smarts are built in. All of the benefits of a direct-to-cloud backup solution that's easy to deploy and manage and scale with infinite capacity and terrific for long-term storage. And of course, it has the power of an integrated purpose-built backup appliance. So you've got the on-prem disk, compute, and network you need to back up, protect your data, and recover, virtualize, and run your servers if something goes wrong. And if all that sounds complicated, it's really not. We deliver it all to you in a single cloud-based dashboard that makes management of all this infrastructure incredibly easy. If you're a partner, you can manage all of your downstream users with it. If you're an enterprise, you can manage up to 200 different locations with it. And we'll see a demo of this in a few slides' time. And so that then brings us to the last point, that DR today captures the wrong data in the wrong places. The old way is that your DR regime, depicted here on the left, would be based around disk, and you'd deploy a disk-based appliance and you would fill it up, and then you would deploy another one, you fill that up, and then you deploy another one and fill that up, and you go round and round and round on the hardware hamster wheel. Well, if there's anything you take away from this webinar, it's get off the hardware hamster wheel. With InfraScale, we give you a thin cloud edge device that is the last disaster recovery device you ever deploy. It's a thin cloud edge device that brings the power of the cloud into your network. And instead of the predominant metaphor being I need to protect more, so therefore I need more disk, it becomes I need to protect more, so therefore I need more cloud. And this really unlocks the unlimited capacity of the cloud for you using intelligent software that understands that not all data requires expensive local capacity, that it could spill data over to the cloud based on age or value. Imagine a box that only had 10 terabytes of internal capacity, but you could send it 100 terabytes or a petabyte of data, and it just magically spills it over. That's what InfraScale does. And if I sound wistful as I describe that, we've been working on this for a decade. But it sort of is a magic backup box. You can send it an unlimited amount of data, and it just figures out how to deal with that. And when I say cloud, I'm talking about any cloud, right? So Infoscale supports your cloud, our cloud, or any cloud. Our cloud is a global network of data centers, 12 data centers around the world. Your cloud could be your own private cloud infrastructure, and any cloud means things like Amazon or Azure. Most data protection vendors kind of lock you into a single cloud infrastructure, but not us. You get complete flexibility. So that brings me to the end of the main presentation, folks. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about us as a company, and then we're going to go into that Q&A and give away the prize. So why does Infoscale do what we do? Well, we believe that every company has the right to recover their data from a disaster quickly, easily, and affordably. And we think everyone needs the peace of mind that comes with knowing their business data is always safe and available. And that's a lot of words on a slide, but I'll tell you what. Two of the worst moments in my life were when I was a young man and I lost all of my notes from university. So I lost all of my law school notes and my engineering notes, and I was absolutely devastated. I paid one of these hard disk companies $2,000 to try and recover it, and it didn't work. And that was just the worst. I mean, the intellectual output of all of my blood, sweat, and tears gone in an instant. Absolutely devastating. And so that sort of sums up the loss side of things. But I'll tell you one of the scariest moments of my life, and that's when I was responsible for hundreds of servers which were supporting tens of thousands of users, and they were down because a few key servers were down, and tens of thousands of users couldn't access their mission critical apps, and I was the guy on the line for it. And whereas losing data, you know, that sort of embodied the loss, the sheer terror of knowing my systems were down but not knowing when they were coming back up, that's a feeling I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And so those two experiences very much shape my attitudes toward this. So it's a very personal mission for me as CEO of the company. And it is for everybody at Infoscale, right? We take this personally. We're trying to make data loss a historical artifact. We're trying to make it a historical footnote. Our grandchildren will laugh at us when they hear us talk about how we lost data. That's why we're in this game. And so how do we do it? We use the cloud. We use smart software instead of expensive hardware. We make DR push buttons simple. And so we deliver to you this single pane of glass which combines cloud backup, disaster recovery, archiving, and file sharing in a single solution. We like to say that Salesforce.com is our spirit animal. Why? Because they came along and took an industry, CRM, which was dominated by old geriatric grandfather companies who hadn't innovated, whose deployments took 6 months and whose products cost millions of dollars, and they turned it on a dime and said, no, that's rubbish. We're going to give you CRM tomorrow, delivered via the web, that you can pay for easily and use immediately. And that's what we're trying to do for data protection. It's dominated by the HPs and the IBMs and the Commvaults of the world who have stopped innovating. They've stopped listening to you, their customers, and we really want to deliver to you push button cloud-delivered data protection which combines backup, DR, archiving, and file sharing in a single, easy-to-use solution. And it seems to be popular. So we've been around since 2006. We've got 1,000 channel partners, more than 1 million devices being protected, where a device is usually a virtual or physical server, protecting over 100 petabytes of data and 20 billion data objects. And so I'm going to skip through a few slides here, because we've covered a ton of this material, and I'm really going to go through to this. What I've been talking about today is our cloud failover solution, which actually we've got a big product announcement just today. We're launching the cloud failover appliance. Historically, we've had a lot of these services available a la carte. Today, we now have a single solution that embodies the entire Infoscale DRaaS offering in a single elegant product line. And it is simple, it's secure, and it's affordable. I'd really like to encourage everybody in the audience to check it out, maybe request a free evaluation unit. And obviously I'm excited by it, but don't take my word for it, right? Listen to Gartner, who named us one of their cool vendors in business continuity and disaster recovery. Listen to Storage Switzerland. Listen to ZDNet, all of whom have noted that we are totally changing the game in data protection. And so you can actually get one of these cloud failover appliance units and deploy it in your network for free, no risk. So if you'd like to do that, what you can do is using the webinar tool, you can actually type in, I would like to evaluate a CFA, and then put in your name and your email address and your phone number, and one of our people will actually get in touch with you to deploy that CFA in your environment. Also, you can check out our website, infrascale.com. Brand new website actually launched this morning along with the launch of the Cloud Failover Appliance, so that's pretty cool. Check that out. I would love to hear from you individually, so if you want to email me, it's ken@infrascale.com. If you want to email the webinar team, like maybe you didn't get a pizza, it's team@infrascale.com. There's a free call on the line. Now, screen we have the Infrascale dashboard. This is kind of mission central. So what this lets you do is really manage all of your infrastructure. And what we want to do is we want to go through and actually see appliances, because that's the product we're talking about today, right? And our appliances are sort of our hardcore data center product line, if you will. So when we go through to appliances here, you've got these rows, and each row represents an office. And on the left, you've got an appliance that is protecting servers, you're protecting an environment basically. And on the right-hand side, you've got the replication options. So some of them are replicating to the cloud, some of them are not replicating at all. And what I want to show you is actually the ability to drill in and manage one of these appliances right from the cloud, so not needing to muck around with VPNs or any other sort of ancillary tech. So for this office, you can see we've been backing up a bunch of servers, and here's all the jobs that have occurred. But what I want to show you is Cloud Boot. Because imagine, again, it's 2 a.m., the server's down, you've gotten the call, right? You're in your bed, and you need to bring back this Exchange server because the original's dead. So it's as simple as finding it, picking the date here on screen where you want to bring that server back to life at. You're then going to configure your network and VPN rules. So, you know, allow traffic from different locations, or you can restrict this to protocols. Then I'm going to put in a notification address for where I want to be notified when this is finished. Usually it takes a couple of minutes. Because there's a small VM, it's going to happen almost instantaneously. And so you can see here that these servers are running. So what I can do is, because they're already running in the cloud, I can now just validate that that's working. So I'm going to drag in a remote desktop. Then I'm going to connect, this is now just Windows authentication over SSL to that particular box. Accept the certificate. Okay, cool. So this is Windows Server Manager, so you'd be familiar with this. We're now into the Windows Server in the cloud. I'm going to fire up a PowerShell, and then let's just ping Google to make sure we're alive. And Bob's your uncle. We're alive. We can ping Google. So that was me failing over a server to the cloud in about a minute. It took, right? And that's how you deal with a disaster with Infrascale. It really just gives you almost instantaneous failover to a second location. And so, last poll for the day, folks, before we do the Ask Me Anything and prize giveaway. And Carla is going to be, I'm sure, has already tallied up whether it's an Xbox, a 3D printer, or a Kindle. We're going to do that based on your feedback earlier. But here's my last poll, and I'm just going to leave this on screen, okay? So the question here is, when it comes to backup and DR, what are you? What sort of animal are you, right? A, I'm not happy with my current backup and DR system. B, I'm happy with, you know, my solution, but I'm interested in that cloud failover thing you just showed. C, I'm deploying new equipment. I'm changing production, and so therefore I'm looking at new protection. D, I'm happy with my system. I'm just learning. There's a question here on the line. Charles says, your accent is awesome. Where are you from? Charles, I am Australian, mate. Where are you from? All right, so while that poll, I'm just going to leave that poll running for the rest of this session. And what I'm now going to do is go all the way back up to the top of the questions list and start answering these questions. Carla, did you manage to get a read on what prize we're going to be giving away based on audience feedback?
Yeah, there were actually lots of requests for the Kindle and also the Xbox, but the Kindle just barely edged out the Xbox. Maybe next time we'll go for the Xbox, folks.
Okay. So let's have a look at this. All right, lots of votes on that topic. Let's find the first question. What is considered a major disaster? Michael, well, you know, a disaster is anything that takes down your mission critical systems. So that could be a motherboard failure or it could be a flood. It's really anything that hits your mission critical apps. Ramesh asked, please share examples of companies that went out of business due to IT issues. Ramesh, I don't have some off the top of my head, but there are many. So let's, let me, on the other hand, give you a really high-profile example of a business that went through extraordinary pain, Sony Pictures. So the chairman resigned. They lost tens of millions of dollars worth of irreplaceable intellectual property. Data loss is not something to be taken trivially. We've got another chap here who had a problem with his pizza and left the webinar because of it. That's a shame. He seems to be upset. Julie asked what ERP stands for. Enterprise Resource Planning, Julie. Lots of comments. Does your solution work with AIX? Yes, it does. What's the average recovery time for cloud-based backup? Well, with our cloud failover appliance, we actually guarantee 15 minutes to be your failover time. What kind of bandwidth is necessary for this solution? We recommend at least 1 megabit of connection. David writes, we have over 350 locations. David, that's great. No problem. We've got some customers with over 1,000 sites. Lots of other sort of comments here. Sorry folks, I'm just scanning through these to find the questions. Ian says, do you offer educational pricing and do you sell direct or through vendors like Zone CDW? We do sell through Zones. We do have educational pricing, substantial discount. We don't normally sell direct. We normally like to work through our partner network. What types of business utilize Infrascale? Jason, all sorts. The American Red Cross, Lockheed Martin, Pepsi, Cola, all the way down to sort of many, many small businesses. So a very diverse set of customers. What's the difference in backup and archive? Vincent, that is actually a really complicated question. Historically, it was all about RTO and RPO, but those walls have sort of crumbled. And so today, there's far less difference between the two. And with Infrascale, you don't have to worry about it because you've got both types of functionality built in. Jason asked how the solution can be tested for a DR test. Jason, best way is actually just to do a failover, make sure everything works, right? It's included in the pricing. Is failover active-active or active standby? Vincent, it can be deployed in both modes. The most expensive option is active-active. The active standby is a little bit cheaper. Okay, had some people who had pizza problems. Look, if you did have pizza problems, please email Carla at team@infrascale.com and we will make that right, okay? You're going to get a voucher or we'll get a pizza delivered tomorrow. Does this support databases like Oracle and SQL Server? It absolutely does. Willie says, being a government entity, we are really looking at anything that supports malware, virus detection, etc. Willie, maybe you could restate your question. I didn't really understand that. Jason says, if this has an AIX solution, I'm interested in learning more. Jason, yeah, we do support AIX all the way back to version 5. Doug asks, what's our backend? Doug, like I said, we're cloud agnostic. We support the Infrascale cloud, your own private cloud, or third-party clouds, for example, Amazon, Azure. Ed is excited that we support AIX. That's great. Julie asks if we support SharePoint. Yes, we do. Ramesh asks, is the cloud used for spillover only, or is all data replicated to the cloud? Ramesh, by default, everything goes to the cloud, but you can change those settings yourself. Ed says, can we control the bandwidth used by the solution? Yes. Amy writes, is it full backups and then incrementals? That's right, Amy, yep, with synthetic fulls presented to you as a user. Doug says, what's the advantage regarding backup for cloud or using your product instead of the AWS or Azure backup solutions? Doug, I'm not aware of an AWS backup solution, and the Azure backup solution only works for Windows and is very, very simple. So, and neither of those actually give you failover technology, so sort of very different solutions. Can you do single file recovery? Yes, we can. What protocol do we use? What ports on the firewall? So it goes over SSL, right? So you don't need to customize your firewall at all, which is good. What happens when we push the DR button? Hans, hopefully that was answered for you in the video with that walkthrough of me doing a failover. Is there a requirement on internet speeds? So long as you've got more than a megabit of connection, you should be okay. Does the end user client purchase the device and then pay a monthly fee for the backup service, or is the device HAS? Andy, that is a really good question. You obviously know something about this space. We have both models available. We have a HAS model available, and we have a upfront fee with a smaller monthly fee model. We have an SSN CCN info. Is the backup to the cloud secure enough that top financial institutions would allow their data to be stored in this manner? Yes. So Jason, we do work with the US Coast Guard, Department of Justice, many police departments across the country because we're CJIS certified, PCI compliant, HIPAA compliant, FINRA compliant. Security is a first class sort of principle here at Infoscale. And if Lockheed Martin can use our service, I'm pretty sure your clients can too. Ed says, do you data dedupe where the file never gets sent to your cloud because you have it from another customer? Ed, no, we don't dedupe across customer boundaries. We do it within a single customer, but never across customer boundaries. Here's the 64 terabyte question. Will it work when I need it? How do I test it? Well, Tim, I recommend you get a free unit, deploy it in your environment, and hammer on it as hard as you can. And of course, that 15-minute guarantee is that. It's a guarantee, right? Is your cloud rated on safety or have any guarantee of the safety of the data? Well, those things I was talking about with CJIS compliant, with FINRA compliant. We do work for the US federal government and many state governments. So yes. What encryption methods do you use? AES 256 bits, which is sort of the NIST standard for government-based data. Do you offer compute at time of DR too, or only data access at time of DR? Ramesh, we offer compute also, so you actually run your servers in our cloud if need be. What happens if someone deletes a file? Would there be several snapshots? Jason, yes, there's sort of an unlimited snapshot history by default. What OS do you run on your appliance? Hope it's Linux. It is a variant of Linux. Yeah, it's our own sort of distro. It's the Infoscale Data Protection OS, but it's based on the Linux kernel. Okay, lots of people are voting for a demo. Some people asking for an eval unit. Remember, folks, if you would like to sample one of these in your environment, type in, like to do an eval, name, phone number, email address. Okay, we've got a few more questions here. When you say boot from, I think VM images. Is that what's being backed up? No, this will do metal servers, VM servers, Hyper-V servers, so lots of different source environments, and we virtualize all of it. So we're doing P2V on the fly. How many recovery points per day? You can set the resolution at every 15 minutes. How long does it typically take to get the initial recovery point completed? Not sure I understand that question. Maybe you could re-ask. Can we set up default route information per server so this would come over automatically instead of having to put it in? Yeah, you can set up your DNS so it'll automatically fail over for sure. How do you define cloud spillover? Can it be policy-based? Yes, Vincent, it totally can be policy-based. Ed thinks my accent's from New York City. Sorry, Ed. Australia. So next question. I'm concerned about security since we're a medical environment. I'm interested in moving data to the cloud, but need lots of details about how it's encrypted. Evan, get in touch with us, okay? We've got a lot of healthcare customers. You know, I'm not going to rattle them off, but some large national insurers, several large provider networks throughout the country, you know, all of whom are spending serious money with us. So healthcare is sort of a market that we like and do well in. So please get in touch with us. You could email me, ken@emphaskull.com, or get in touch with, you know, one of our sales team, frankly, and yeah, we'd really like to talk to you about that. Okay, going to move into rapid fire mode here because we've got a few left. Would be interested to know how your solution differs from Axient. Well, Andy, best way to do that is ask for an eval device. I'm looking for OSX server DR. Does this cover OSX? Yes, it does. What's the cost? Starts at a couple $100 a month and then scales up from there. How to perform big data backup in the cloud? Well, Vincent, you can use this solution to back up unstructured big data. For example, if you're running, you know, Hadoop file system. How many IOPS can the box handle? Jeff, I don't know, but that's a great question for one of our sales engineers. What are the spin-up times based on data size? Well, Rick, the worst case scenario is 15 minutes, and that's the guarantee. What happens if I can't connect to the internet? Well, you just boot on the appliance. What's the typical length for implementation timeline? A couple of days. What kind of load will it add to our network? Nothing substantial. That's really inconsequential. Are the backups stored in the USA? It's your choice. You can choose where they get stored. We've got data centers on 4 continents. Can I see the info about a free CFA unit again? Best thing to do is type your details in, like an evaluation, name, phone number, email address, and we'll get in touch with you. I actually can't replay that slide. Is the connection to your cloud over the public internet, or is MPLS preferred? Both are provided, so if you want to go MPLS, we support that. What's the price for the on-premise unit? It really varies based on capacity, but it starts at a few $100s a month. What support options are available? 24/7 support based out of North America. Is there retention limitation on how long we keep data? Totally customizable. Can you do failover to a testing environment? Absolutely. And in fact, those tests are included for free. Is there coverage available for AS400? There will be next quarter. We would like to test you. Okay, cool. Do you support Oracle? Yes, we do. Do you support item level recovery for Exchange data stores? Yes, right down to the message level. Do I need to manually sync data between the failover and primary site? No, it's all automatic. Are you PCI compliant? Yes. We use AWS. Do you support it? Yes. Is my data encrypted in the cloud? Absolutely. What if the failover fails? Well, we give you a failover appliance and a failover cloud. The chances of them both failing simultaneously, almost impossible. Do you support SharePoint? Yes. Is this similar to a Store Simple solution? You mean like Microsoft Store Simple, Charles? Does our IT department need special training? No, Julie, you saw how easy it was. We're government. Do you have GSA pricing? Yes. David, can you email me, please? Personal favor, I've got some questions about GSA. I used to work in the federal government, actually, in procurement. Can you email me, David Eng, ken@emphaskull.com. I want to chat with you. Do everyday users need special training? No, Julie, it's really simple to use. Is the connection to the server only through RDP? No, whatever you like, SSH, Telnet, if you were still using that, RDP, whatever port, really. Expand on the 15-minute guarantee. Jeff, failover to, if you buy a pair of our devices, you can failover to a second location in under 15 minutes or your money back. Have you been hacked before? No. Will it work with Windows 10? Yes. Do you do backup at the VM level? Yes. Can you boot UEFA machines? Yes. How long does a reboot take? Depends on the system, generally on the size of the system. Do you have a New York office? Yes. Do you have multiple ISP carriers to your DR site? Yes, we have many DR sites, and we always choose sites with multiple public internet connections coming into them. Interested in the test unit? That's great. What compliance do you have? PCI compliant, FINRA compliant, HIPAA compliant, SARBOX compliant. How large is your company? 160 employees. Julie didn't hear an answer to her question. Julie, if you could re-ask, maybe I missed it. Is there a price difference in storing location? David, there are small differences between like America versus Canada versus Australia versus Britain. How do you perform backup for metadata? Is it different to regular backup? No, it's not. We just do it all in a single process. What if our internal network crashes? Does this affect backup? No, because you've got a second site with us. Do we need super fast broadband? No, you just need at least 1 megabit of connection. I'm a solutions provider in the virtualization and cloud computing market. I'd like to investigate a partnership with Infoscale. Who should I contact? John, we will have somebody contact you. If you could just type in what territory you're in, John, and say, so I'm in Ohio, phone number, email address, and then we'll route you to the right person. We've generally got people in all the major sort of parts of the USA, so send somebody out to buy you lunch. Support for HPUX? Yes. What type of encryption do you employ? AES 256. Can I provide my own keys? Yes. Do you support Apple hardware? Yes. Microsoft Store Simple? Yeah, Charles, it's different to Microsoft Store Simple. That's more of a NAS, whereas this is a data protection appliance. Jeff says, can the appliance be managed from the VM environment? Additional tab. Jeff, we don't have a plugin for vSphere just yet. All right. How many users can the device have, and can they have different levels of access? Unlimited number of users and 4 different levels of access. Yes. Do you have a Southeast office? We've got one in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. Is 15-minute response time E2E end-to-end? Yes. Do you have a local rep in the state of Washington? No. Closest would be Northern Cal. What awards have you won? Heaps. Check out our website. Is pricing determined by the partner? Yes. We're looking at vendors. Can you email me, please? The information you're asking me there is not something I announce on our webinar. Do you compress and utilize data deduplication? Yes. Is there an app where I can manage my data via a smartphone? Yes. No VM support. Did I hear that right? No, Hal, you did not hear that right. We have first-class VM support. Do you have a local Texas rep? No, we don't have somebody in Texas itself. We have a bunch of data centers in Texas itself, but no sales folk. But we do have reps in just over the way in Georgia and to the west a little bit. So if you're in Texas, we'll get somebody to you. We're down there all the time. In fact, I did an event in Houston just 4 weeks ago. That's it, folks. We are out of time. So, Carla, I hope you've been keeping tally on who won. And by democratic vote, we're giving away a Kindle. I really thought that the Xbox would have won it. But, Carla, do you have a winner for us?
Ken, there were a lot of requests for the Xbox too, so we'll do that one next time. How's that? Because it was pretty split.
Okay.
So we do have a winner, and I also wanted to let everyone know I received lots of emails to that team at Infoscale address. Many of you said, hey, the pizza just arrived a little bit later during the presentation. So thanks everyone who wrote in. Those of you who still had not received it, now at the end of the presentation, I'll be following up with you. So the winner of the Kindle today is Joseph Hall. Congratulations, Joseph. We had lots of questions today. Ken wasn't able to get through every single one of them, but we will follow up with all of you. That's it for me.
Terrific. Thanks, Carl. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your attention today. I hope it's been enjoyable. Join us for another pizza webinar. We do these things sort of every couple of weeks. Hope it's been educational for you. Remember to reach out and request an evaluation unit. And other than that, have a fantastic day. Thanks from everyone here at InfraScale. Okay, bye-bye now.